positive transformation. The organization, called Cultural Leadership, brings together youth of diverse racial, religious, and cultural backgrounds, teaches them to help change society, and in the process, each of these amazing young people find themselves transformed.
Oh, freedom, freedom, oh, freedom over me, and before I'll be a slave.
I didn't really know a lot about cultural leadership moving into it. I had heard that it was a very transformative experience. I knew a lot about Jewish culture, and I didn't know as much about African American culture.
I was enrolled at the East St. Louis Charter School in Illinois, and my principal, Tony Neal, his son had did the program, and he had told me about the program and told me to look it up and see if I'd be interested in doing it, and I looked it up and I really liked what I saw.
Growing up, because of tracking, even at a young age, and I didn't have very many black friends at school.
I'm originally from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation in South Dakota. I'm Lakota Sioux, and I actually was, raised on the reservation, but I went to a border town school, a white school. So my idea of social justice was based around the prejudice from the border town versus the native people.
I've been pulled over by cops for no reason at all other than the fact that I'm black, just walking around a predominantly white neighborhood. They just stop me and ask me what I'm up to. I've been followed around stores, and I was able to speak from a really personal standpoint, seeing as how I was a victim of those injustices growing up, fairly more often than I would like to say.
A white Jewish kid has never had to deal with walking into a store and, feeling like all eyes were on them and feeling that, they weren't safe or trusted in that environment.
Yeah, there were definitely some things on a 3-week trip that I remember very well.
If I had to pick a moment where I changed the most during those 3 weeks, for me would be in Birmingham. We visited a lot of different historic places in Birmingham that held up a lot of weight. We watched the 4 Little Girls documentary before we got to Birmingham, which is the story of the 4 little girls that died in a bombing of a church. To see lives that were lost for rights that I have today, even though they weren't marching, they weren't carrying picket signs. These were 4 little girls that got caught in the crossfire, but their deaths were just as meaningful as MLK or Malcolm X. They were still as meaningful as those people that were carrying those picket signs and marching. It was probably that moment where I was like, this is real. I think that moment is where I probably changed the most.
We walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and we all kind of linked hands, and just to be in that location, all of us together as a group, kind of reenacting this hugely pivotal moment from the civil rights movement was incredible, and an experience that I'm not ever going to forget.
I think the most significant part of my journey was definitely this group meeting, this group share out that we had in Kelly and Grimm Park.
I shared the story of my twin brother who had gotten arrested and went to jail not long before we started the trip. I shared that, and a few of my friends told me about stories they had growing up, really rough stories, and everybody was just crying, and they were all coming up to me, comforting me, and encouraging me to keep my head up and keep my hopes up and not be so sad about my brother going to jail.
Those individual stories and experiences really stuck with me and really helped me understand what my peers had gone through, and that kind of has continued to help me be a better change agent.
I think a big part of what makes the transformative journey so heavy and so meaningful for students is because it's so much crammed into 3 weeks. It might seem a pretty small detail, but you're going through so much civil rights history and so much social justice training in a small period of time that it can be really emotional. But you're also processing it with chaperones. So you kind of work through how you're feeling and what it means to you as an individual.
Yes, I remember the welcome back speeches at CRC. I remember those very well.
I don't see cultural leadership as one singular experience. I see it as a journey and as a pathway to help me become a better change agent.
Senior in high school, and one of the many students who have no idea what I'm going to be when I grow up. But I do know who I want to be, and cultural leadership gave me that, and they gave me that sense of direction.
I remember we were on a trip. We were in Birmingham, Alabama, in the parking lot of IHOP. And everybody was talking about college plans, and I was just like sitting there silent, wasn't saying a thing. Until Karen walks up and says, where are you going to go to college? Oh, I don't know, maybe some community college. And she said, no, that's not good enough for you. And then she told me about Brandeis, and she told me about the TYP program. But when we got home from the trip, I looked up Brandeis, and I was like, oh, she must be crazy. She doesn't really expect me to be able to get into this school. And I told her about it, and she was like, you should apply. Then apply. And I was like, okay, I applied, and here I am.
Being in college now and looking back like, wow, I'm talking about these people in my college classes, and I can raise my hand and say, oh, I've met him. I've met John Lewis. You know, what do you know about him? You know, that's really empowering to be with someone who would die for the rights of others.
Because of my work through cultural leadership and participating in that program, it really energized me to get more involved in issues that I was very passionate about, whether it was genocide, awareness, immigration reform, marriage equality. All of these were things that I previously had very strong opinions about, but I wasn't really necessarily aware of what I could do, what steps I could take to try to inspire change, whether it was in me or in other people. And cultural leadership kind of allowed me to have a voice and to give a voice to those who didn't have one.
It definitely really kind of put me in that social justice mindset that, you know, go out there, change the world, be that change agent, and do it in a way that fits with you. And I think I'm kind of doing that now.
Next year I will be more involved in the Center for Jewish Life on campus at Princeton. I'm hoping to engage more Jewish students and more Black students in conversation.
I'm currently the coordinator of culturally diverse recruitment programs for the University of Missouri. So that means I recruit a lot of our minority students from our top feeder schools in St. Louis and Kansas City.
Because before cultural leadership, I was really uncomfortable talking about racial problems and stuff like injustices and like problems dealing with the Black community. But after cultural leadership, it's just like these are things that need to be addressed, so it was really easy for me to talk about those things.
People from the group are going to be speaking at my synagogue about change specifically and how we have changed.
My name is Hannah Croft. It's not so much a single moment as the whole picture that describes my year in cultural leadership. It's the way everything blended together, from the awkward first day handshakes to the tight end of trip hugs. Somewhere from day one to today, I've changed. In Selma, Alabama, I clung to Marquise's hand in the dark chamber of a slave ship simulation, surrounded by screams I couldn't separate from my own. Across Washington, D.C. in the Deep South, I shook the hand of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a Tuskegee Airman, and several investigative journalists. Through it all, something has rocked my once narrow corner of the world. I now see the world for the complex, many-storied place it is.
I've been to a number of synagogues, Shabbat services, and a Jewish summer camp in Mississippi. I have learned that Jewish history has many similarities with Black history, and both of these minority groups have been the target of unjustified hate and oppression.
It was sad to hear problems African Americans still face in America. For example, to hear African American students talk of being followed in stores or asked if they need more time to take tests, it made me think of how many problems we still face because of our differences. To openly and honestly hear the stories has moved me, and I have become closer to individuals I would have never met otherwise.
Over the course of this last year, my learning has morphed into action. I've been able to share my experiences in my own environment, my South County High School, where diversity is scarce. I've become an advocate for diversity. I believe that we misjudge each other because we misunderstand each other. So I hope to facilitate a greater understanding of the cultures I've had such a great time getting to know.